3, 2, 1. Good evening. It's 8 p.m. and it's Thursday. The, what is it, the 17th? Yeah, Thursday the 17th of June, 2021. I'm excited to be back tonight. Funny story about why I wasn't here doing this last week, but that's one for another day. I'll speak to my barber, and if he authorises the tale, then I might tell it. But anyway, tonight I was working it out. A friend of mine, I've known him for about 16 years now. And we met in the third job that I'd had after I left the Royal Air Force. And I joined the wonders of Sky over in Livingston. And I met this gentleman. We worked together. My very first memory of this man was him banging on my door on my first sort of unaccompanied adult trip to London on the company for business. He was banging on my door at about 8:30 in the morning saying, "We have a taxi outside waiting to go into work. I will wait for 5 minutes, and if you're not out, I am leaving." So anyway, when I caught up with him in work, this man, whilst not a technologist by day, has a very, very keen eye for photography. He's the creator of a wonderful website called Dark Edinburgh. I will leave it to your imagination as to what it's about. It's about Dark Edinburgh, images from the city, absolutely fantastic. And he's on Instagram and all of that, but I'll let him tell you that. A great photographer. He's an author. He's released 2 novels. Well, I should say 2.5, but we'll go with 2 because the third one is not out. I mean, if that's not enough, I better just introduce him and let him tell you the rest. He has got a very, very eclectic taste in music, I think. Some might say fucking weird, but anyway, that's a big enough intro. Please give a big warm hi G's JFDI podcast welcome to Mr. Scott Liddell.
Well, thank you very much for. I'd totally forgotten about that morning that when I dragged you out or tried to drag you out your hotel room. I completely forgot about that.
I've never forgotten that. Never. I was so embarrassed, and you were just like, "It's cool."
Funnily enough, though, as you were saying it, I was getting some sort of weird memory, and I got this sudden memory of the smell of your breath.
What was it? Oh, alcohol.
It was honking, I think, is what it was.
But do you know when I think about it, what I think one of the reasons why it was so weird that you were like, you know, you were like almost my responsible adult down there, and I think you were my responsible adult more than once during our time at Sky. But that was the first trip away, and it was like, but I think it was the first time I'd been away on business. I didn't do that a lot in my previous 2 jobs after the Air Force. And if I'd have done what I'd have done, like when I was with you, when I was in the Air Force, I would have, well, that's why I was up on so many charges. Anyway, yes, it is always stuck in there because it was very cool. Very cool indeed. Anyway, we're going to talk about music tonight, amongst other things, right?
Cool.
And the whole script, 4 or 5 songs. You went for 5. Songs that have I think what we said in the brief was songs that have either defined a part of your life, songs that have got under your skin, or I think maybe you said like become part of your DNA. So you've chosen 5, and we'll kick right off with the first one. Is that all right?
Go for it.
So it's Things Start to Unwind by Andy White.
Yeah. So this is a kind of an unusual choice, I think, but I put it in there because it ties into how you end up with a musical taste at all, right? How do you end up liking the things that you like? And this for me is a kind of direct line back to a story about why I ended up liking the things I like. So I'll do a little bit of boring history. So
it's not going to be boring, by the way, because you've probably covered in about 3 questions I was going to ask you anyway. So
I've not really been that interesting all my life. But anyway, when I was about 16 or 17, I got a Saturday job in a bookshop. Right now, some of you of the right vintage may remember Bargain Books in Princess Street. It's not there anymore. I think it's where the Swarovski shop is now. But it was the place you went to cause mayhem on a Saturday night because it was the only shop that was open. And there's probably a whole book in all of the things that happened in Bargain Books on a Saturday night. But in my time there, right, I met a guy called Dave. Hello, Dave. You're probably not watching, but if you are, hello. And Dave is responsible for like shaping a huge amount of my musical taste. Because at the time, I thought I was vaguely cool because I listened to Madness or Eurythmics and stuff, and it was all kind of vaguely chart stuff. But Dave was a full-on John Peel aficionado, right, and just had all the cool stuff you could possibly imagine, right? And it was just like this wild, eye-opening moment. And there was a thing that my friend Stuart, you know Stuart as well, Graham.
Yeah.
We call the thing we call like a kind of revered thing we call the tape, right? And what happened was Dave made a C90 of all of the things that we were not cool enough to know about that he knew about. And this tape was like the genesis of almost all of my musical taste from then on.
Got you.
And so, it kind of fueled the kind of voyage of adventure you go from when you're 16 and 17. That's when you're kind of most formative with that kind of stuff. And funnily enough, Things Start to Unwind isn't on that tape, right? But there's one of the songs that was on the tape was a song from the same album called The Soldier's Sash by Andy White. I think it was like the second or third song on the tape.
Yeah.
And that led me to loving Andy White, certainly Andy White's first album, and so round about that time, everybody does know it, Dave. You're right. Round about that time when I've finished working at Bargain Books, I was about to go to university, right? And this is the kind of where you can tell I'm a bit of a techie, right? The tape was so revered that it had, it and all of its tape friends had to come to uni with you, right? It's quite a difficult thing in those days, taking your music collection to university with you, because, you can't lug all your vinyl with you. So I got a kind of case, and I had a room for about like 20 tapes in it, and I had a ghetto blaster, and this was all the music I had. But being quite nerdy, I sat one, and this is the other thing is I've got a huge love for fonts, which makes me quite odd as well, I think. But
for what fonts?
Fonts, yeah. If you look behind, there's loads of font books behind me, and I sat for at least a couple of nights with these tapes that I was taking to uni with me, right? And I had white covers on them all, and I made covers with. Do you remember Letraset?
Yeah. Oh my God! You had to peel them off.
You kind of rub them off. You kind of think about how kind of like archaic that technology is now. It would take you 5 minutes to print off, 20. Sat for hours, letter at a time, rubbing them all off.
Oh my Lord!
And so I did all of this, and then took all these tapes with me, right? And the reason I picked Things Start to Unwind is, it's a great song, right? It's one of these songs that kind of builds and builds and builds. It adds layers as you go all the time. I love songs like that. Like They're There by Radiohead's the same. It's this kind of like building of layers. But the reason I picked that is that it ties in with this kind of this collection of these tapes, like the Ark of the Covenant, and letrasetting them all, because there's a line in Things Start to Unwind, which is, it said, I gave him a card that said on one side, Things Start to Unwind. And back then when you're 17 and you're dead cool and you've got letraset, what do? I got a postcard and I letter-setted on the back of the postcard just simply "Things Start to Unwind." That's all, and I sent it to my mate Stuart in the post.
Yeah.
I doubt he still got it, but if he does, I'd love to see it. You know, this my beautifully letter-setted postcard that just says "Things Start to Unwind," and that came from, you know, that very first tape. And
Yeah.
you know, I've got a Spotify playlist of as much of the tape as I can find. So I'll share it with you. It's not, we couldn't. It's some of it's so obscure you can't even find it on Spotify. You know, it's that kind of weird. But there's an awful lot of me and all of that. You know, that kind of, you know, the genesis of the music thing, but also that kind of weird nerdy kid who letter-setted everything. You know, and even then, when you know, think about back then, this was like what, 1987, 88. You know, the fact that we were, you know, when I went to uni, you know, Stuart and I used to send written letters to each other, or, you know, like, you don't do that anymore. It's
handwritten letters.
Yeah, no, all the time. We've still got a pile of them, but I think when you read them, they're probably quite embarrassing. But the one thing that's not embarrassing, just a little simple white postcard with "Things Start to Unwind" on the back.
Yeah.
I'd love to have that, but it's probably long gone.
In letter-set.
Yeah.
I wonder if I bet you can still buy it in like craft shops, can't you?
I bet you can. I'm kind of tempted now. I might just go online and buy some now.
You could just reenact it, just remake it.
Yeah.
You could do. Brilliant. What at that time, I love that I'm listening to the story, and it's very, like you said, it might be a bit nerdy, but I'm thinking, you know, weren't they around the same time over on the streets of New York, just doing the same thing, but just with a different kind of music?
I suppose so, yeah. But, you know, the thing is that for me, you know, what that kind of story embodies is really the kind of the opening of my mind to lots of different types of music.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, whatever was happening, I wouldn't have known what was happening in New York, right? I was just, you know, you grow up in Wester Hailes, you don't really see much of the world, you know, you don't really know much of what's going on, and it was a real kind of eye-opening moment. And you know, when you find out about all this stuff and you start listening to John Peel and you discover this mad world of things that that otherwise you would never have discovered.
Yeah. What else was going on in your life and your mind outside, or you might outside of uni and music at that time then?
Well, you know, it's hard to know really. You know, what kind of 17-year-old me was doing. You know, just failing to chase girls probably was always you know, that's the bane of every teenage boy's life, I think. But no, you know, I was quite a kind of nerdy wee soul, you know. So you know, you just kind of, you did your schoolwork, you did your best, you went to uni, and you know that was all part, because you know, nobody in my family had ever been to uni, right? So it's quite a big thing, you know, and that was what it was all about, you know. About the same time, you know, a lot of the books that are behind me are, you know, you see that little line of Penguin Classics, you know.
Yeah.
I was reading all of them, desperately trying to be cool, and not really understanding many of them, I think. But I've still got them all now.
Crikey, there we go. So what on the subject of reading, what book are you reading right now?
The one that I'm in the middle of right now is a book called The Man in the Red Coat by Julian Barnes.
Why have I heard of that?
So if you've never read any Julian Barnes, you should. He's kind of sickeningly good. You know, he can write anything, and he's amazing. The Man in the Red Coat is different for him. It's not fiction. It's kind of, The Man in the Red Coat is it's a guy called Pozzi, who was a kind of Italian surgeon who kind of hung about in Belle Epoque Paris.
Right.
And it's a kind of history of him and the time around him. And it's a fascinating tale. I have read The Disappearing Scotsman.
I like that. I like the sound of that, actually, that book. I do.
Well, anything by Julian Barnes is amazing.
Right, okay, but you said that one's a little bit... The Man in the Red...
The Man in the Red Coat.
The Man in the Red Coat. Right, okay. Yes. Have you read The Disappearing Scotsman?
No, because I got a very early, like, electronic copy of it, didn't I? Yeah.
You did. Did you read all of it?
I think I read most of it. I don't read much these days, to be honest, but...
Should we go on to the next tune?
Go for it.
Right, because I'm thinking we've got 5. We've got 5. I was saying before we come on, this one, as soon as Pinky's Pirate Radio is up and running, this gets played. What a great tune. Asphalt World by Suede.
Yeah. So, you know that thing people always say, what your favourite band, and actually you want to say like about 5 different bands, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and because the truth is that everybody's favourite band should be the Beatles, right? And there's no other answer after that, right? So everything else is a kind of your second favourite band, really. And I've got lots of answers, but you know, certainly
unless of course you're Steve McCallum.
Well, that's true.
He doesn't like them at all, does he?
He doesn't, but he's, you know, he's usually got good taste, but that's one thing that he gets very, very badly wrong.
Anyway, sorry, carry on.
But you know, you catch me on the right day, I might say that Suede are my favourite band. You know, they probably aren't, but you know, they're kind of up there in that second tier under the Beatles. You know, and I've kind of always kind of loved that kind of mix of kind of drama and guitar and, you know, love of a big chorus and stuff like that. And
yeah.
and Asphalt World's not probably not certainly not the poppiest tune, you know. And you know, if those of you know Suede, you know, the second album, Dog Man Star, there's not really a bad song on it. But Asphalt World's this big, long, kind of sprawling, almost kind of prog rock thing that kind of. But thing is, for me, it's like just one big long mood, you know. And you know, Graham, you mentioned at the start the kind of Dark Edinburgh thing, and I think of Asphalt World as the Dark Edinburgh anthem. You know, that's when you're kind of out in the dark with the camera. That's the kind of tune that I hear in my head. That's the mood that you're going for. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like this kind of, you know, one of the very, very earliest Dark Edinburgh photos I did was like a taxi on the South Bridge, you know, and there's a line in Asphalt World about being in a taxi, you know, and that kind of joined it all together. So for me, the kind of the whole vibe of it, that kind of nighttime city kind of darkness vibe is what, you know, I have in my head when I'm out with the camera at night. So that's kind of, you know, and it's an amazing song, right? It's like, you know, it's kind of got this kind of, you know, Bernard Butler does this kind of constant solo all the way through it, and then, you know, it does the old kind of favorite thing of dying away to nothing and then coming back, and you know, it's you know, it's a good one if you're ever just slightly drunk, right? It's a good one to just turn all the lights off and listen to in the dark. It's brilliant for that. Not that I'm ever drunk. Obviously.
How slightly drunk on a scale of 1 to my ex-military friends?
Well, yeah, because you know, yeah, I'm, you know, 100% lightweight, so you know, my version of slightly drunk is probably negligible to everyone else, I would think. But I would set your own scale for that sort of stuff. I'm not one to give that kind of advice. Just
choose the mood. Is the
but
advice.
You know, it's a definite lie in the dark song.
Ah, yes, yeah. Do you know what? It's interesting though, because I was listening to it as I was getting ready, and I kind of felt that there's still just that, like you say, because it's that constant sort of like, you know, but it just flows, doesn't it? Yeah. And I just kind of went in the flow with it as well. It's good, but interesting that you mentioned about the that as the Dark Edinburgh theme. Because I was gonna ask you whereabouts. I mean, apart from the fact that you like photography and you're from Edinburgh, where did how did, or I guess not where did Dark Edinburgh come from, but how did it kind of come about?
Well, I've funnily enough I've got a kind of canned answer for this, because I'm about to do a Dark Edinburgh book, and I had to kind of describe this at the start of the book. And well, Graham knows about this because he's in it. Look, I'll show you. Right, that's Graham there, wearing a stupid hat like he does.
I wear stupid hats so well.
You do. So I always say that Dark Edinburgh started in Bruges in Belgium.
Right.
In 2008, me and some pals did a kind of charity banger rally around Europe.
Yeah.
That started.
I remember signing the car.
Yeah. I think it was the second one we did. We were in Bruges. Yeah. And it was a gorgeous night in May, and like Bruges was kind of it is a nice hat, Karen, you're right. And everybody and I just went out round the city on my own at night with the camera to see what I could come up with, and just loved it. That whole kind of cities at night. I just kind of love the vibe, the fact that it's dark but it's also light, and you're just looking for interesting pictures. And I did that all around Europe as we drove about. And then when I came back, having loved doing night photography in cities, I thought, well, I live in a not bad city. I should have a go at that myself. Right. And so I started going out at night in Edinburgh, and that's where it kind of, about 2010, that's when I kind of started doing it, properly, and, got a website and stuff like that about then.
I was going to ask you this. Everybody's got their question, haven't they? Their signature. But we call this the JFDI podcast, and I ask everybody, how do you apply your JFDI? But it's a perfect example. But do you have any others? Where and how in your life you apply your JFDI? We used to hear that a lot at Sky, didn't we? JFDI.
Yeah, well, I'd say I don't really, the thing about JFDI is not as powerful for me as something that I always have, which is kind of, is optimism. Like, you're quite an optimistic person, right? Yeah. And I kind of view that. Aye. I'm sure Karen's watching this going, aye, no chance. He's a more but no, I kind of embody it as a kind of optimistic thing, in that I always like to think that you can get anything done if you really want to, and you have to you have to pick the right things and stuff like that. But people always kind of ask me, I end up dipping my toes into lots of different things, writing and photography and all these different things. And people can say, well, how do you do it? Well, the only way to do it is to actually do it, Yeah. It's, and so it's, photography for me was something that, I did when I was a kid, wasn't very good at. And, and it's a good example of where persistence can get you, right? Mm. The way you get good at photography is by taking photos, right? And I look back at the photos, from certainly from 2004 and 5, and can look at them now, going, "What the hell was I doing?" Right? But I've been doing it for 15, 16 years now, and the only reason I've got good at it is because I just kept going. And it's actually, we look at Dark Edinburgh online. I've posted a photo on Facebook every day since October 2013. Right. Wow. And the reason that I've got better at it is just from that level of persistence, and that's my version of JFDI, which is kind of tied into some sort of weird selective OCD thing, the kind of compulsion to do it. Yeah. Even when you and I were going down to London every week, I was still posting photos of Edinburgh online every night, because I was kind of taking photos at the weekend, scheduling them all over the week. So I never missed a day.
Yeah.
So, you know, my version of JFDI is this that kind of an optimism kind of joined with, you know, this kind of persistence. And you know, continuing to get better, because it's like writing books, right? You know, right? Writing a book is really, really hard.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not.
and you know, and what's hard about it, you know, you can
10 years.
yeah, you can write one sentence followed by another sentence followed by another sentence. You can but you know, sitting down and thinking, actually, I need to do this. You know, I need to write 80,000 words or whatever. It's very daunting, and the thing that stops you doing it is just how big it seems. You know, and that's the good thing about having done it a few times now, is you're not as daunted anymore. Your second book will happen a lot easier than your first.
Well,
because you always feel like you're miles from the finish line, and you kind of think, especially you know, like me, when you write a book that very few people read, you sit there going, why on earth am I doing this? You know, what's compelling me to keep going? You know, because it's, you know, it won't, you know, it'll never be famous, it'll never sell thousands, but you know, I just enjoy doing it, and that keeps you going.
Yeah. And do you know what, that is exactly at the heart of it, at the root. That's exactly what this whole JFDI thing is about. It's about just, you know, taking action. Sometimes it might not be comfortable action. It might be something that you feel, you know, is hard, is difficult to do, but you need to apply it. You know, even little steps, little baby steps at a time. It's about just choosing to do something, and where that is, like, you know, small term sort of pain in certain areas for longer term gain. It's about, you know, doing something that kind of basically improves it, you know, helps you grow, helps you develop as a person, or helps you just kind of, you know, be happier, even just, you know, something that helps you, you know. So I think pretty much in, you know, in the same, but interesting word that you used there, persistent, because I think that it's key, right? It's got to keep going.
Yeah, and you know, there's, you know, it's, you can, you know, I know it, for me, it works over time, because I know I've got better at things that I've continued to do. You know, I'm not brilliant at any of them, but I can see that I've got better. I see that my photography's got better. I know my writing's got better, because you get more confident, and you know, you learn more about how to do it. And it's only by being persistent that you get there.
Yeah. How long did your second book take to write in comparison to your first?
Well, it's a bit shorter, but it was a lot quicker. I wrote that, you know, about the time when you and I were in London, because I got into a routine. I wrote a lot of it on planes. So I would sit with my iPad on a plane and write about 1,000 words a journey, and you know, so kind of got through it quite quickly. When I got going, I got through the bulk of it pretty quickly.
Which one was that? Terra Exodus?
Yeah.
Ah, right. Ah. Then are you going to talk about the next one? Because seeing as we're right there on the topic, right?
Well, what I could do is I should, if I go on to my third song, right? Because it relates to my second book.
Go for it. So your third song is La Piña by Sansón. Did I say that right?
It's a bit of classical music. There's a composer called Camille Sansón who did a kind of, don't know what you call it, a series of tunes called the Carnival of Animals. So, you know, each of the tunes is about a separate animal. So La Piña is the swan. And the reason I picked that is it ties into my second book, because in the book, there's one of the characters plays the cello, and I had an idea for a bit of the book where she would play a song on the cello, but I didn't know what piece of cello music it was. So I asked a few mates, and it was my pal David that said you should go with Le Cygne by Saint-Saëns, which I think he still intends to get played at his funeral. I think that was his plan.
Who's that?
You don't know him, I don't think.
All right, okay.
And it's a lovely tune. Go and listen to it. It's a beautiful thing.
I did listen to it, yeah.
And the reason I picked it is because, you know, that bit of that book is the favorite kind of scene I've ever written. You know, it's just this kind of lovely little scene of this woman playing this song on the cello. With no spoilers, but and that's why, you know, it's a tune I listen to all the time, because when you're writing, I don't know about you, Graham, but I can't listen to anything with words in it when I'm writing.
No.
So
no.
I spend more of my time listening to kind of classical movie soundtrack stuff. Yeah. You know, so I've got a really good playlist of stuff that, you know, is just instrumentals of different types.
Oh, I'll need to get that from you. I'll need to get that. I found myself listening to like meditation playlists during the day, binaural beats, and
well, no, I'll send
like instrumentals.
Yeah, no, it's because there's lots of really good modern composers like Max Richter, Oliver Arnolds, Niels Fram, these sorts of guys that I listen to all the time, and you know they're amazing for writing to. But that piece by Saint-Saëns is amazing, and it kind of, for me, it's the kind of heart of the book. Here's one I prepared earlier. I think it's chapter.
Is that one still for sale?
Yes, available from Obverse Books. Stuart would insist that I punt it.
Plug it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Do you know what we do here? You see.
Oh, you got a bit of technology.
Yeah. Whereabouts can it be bought?
Obversebooks.co.uk. I should warn you though, it's no very cheery.
No, but do you know what? It's good. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. It's not for me to say really, but
there you go.
There you go. Look at that. Isn't technology wonderful?
I know we're getting good at this.
I know. It's better than GB News, because all of their banners have had typos in them.
So this was the second book.
Yes.
And the first book, the Beatleman, which I loved the whole idea around, which was about a guy who only ever spoke in Beatles lyrics, right? Yes. That was the kind of I loved that, and that was a bit more cheery, that book, in places.
Yeah, it had cheery bits in it. You know, I think you know there's some not cheery bits too.
Yeah. Do you know what? Anytime I remember the book, I remember obviously the story, but I always remember the story attached to about somebody, somebody's opinion or their thoughts and view on the one and only sex scene that you've ever written.
Yeah, I'm not doing that again.
Anyway, when is the third book coming out?
So I don't know exactly. It is. I'm trying to get the photography book done first, and then I'll think about what I'm going to do with the third book. You know, it's sitting waiting to go. It took me years. It's enormous. It's 98,000 words. It's a monster. But and the thing is, you know, I need to get out of the way, because I'm dying to start writing the sequel. This one will have a sequel. But yeah, so hopefully this year, I would think we'll get it out somehow.
Right. Good. Well, it's been because this is the one obviously that we spoke about whilst we were in London.
In London, yeah.
It was like the ideas were flying around.
Yeah, no, it was actually the whole idea was born in London. I was at my sister-in-law's house, and I had the idea for it in the shower in Hampstead.
Oh, there you go. Talking of Hampstead, and earlier you were talking about Bruges. It seems a really a good time to ask about, because you do quite a lot of traveling. You enjoy traveling as well. You enjoy seeing different places. You've done a few cruises and stuff lately as well. So 3 things, 3 places. 1, best place you've ever visited. 2, worst place you've ever visited. And 3, somewhere that you haven't visited that you would like to.
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, see, I think my stock answer for the best place is Bruges. I love Bruges. You know, I went back there for New Year, not long before we all got locked down. Actually, that was my last foreign trip. So I was there for New Year going into 2020. So that was amazing. It's a great wee place. It's gorgeous. Worst place I've visited. Well, you know, that pub in Brentford wasn't very good. The Beehive. No go back there.
What one? The Beehive?
Were you not there that night where these rugby guys threatened to batter us?
Was I there?
I think you were there. You were always there.
On. Yes. I know where you. But mind you, I was thinking was there a Globe in Brentford? Was the Beehive the one that was just kind of down a few steps, almost just over the bridge?
No, it was a kind of big old traditional pub on a corner.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, yeah. I don't know.
But
stay away from the Beehive in Brentford.
Yeah, I'm not going back there. Places I'd like to. I think it's probably first on my list is probably New York. I've never been to New York.
You've not?
No. So I need to go to New York. I think is the first on my list.
Right. Okay. There we go. I feel you kind of avoided the second one, but that's it. It's because there's no kind of I know what you mean though. I can't. You say to me, "Where's the worst place I've ever been?" I'd probably say like 7 days at Her Majesty's pleasure whilst I was in the RAF. But yeah, I couldn't give you a country, for example, that I've been to that I think that I ever thought was a shithole.
No, they're always great. You know,
something interesting about wherever you go, right?
Yeah, like my first ever foreign holiday, right? You know, we didn't have many foreign holidays, but in 1981, we went on a package holiday to Romania while it was still communist.
You never did?
Did.
So did we.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a really cheap way to get sunshine, and it was amazing because it was so clean. Everybody was, you know, out sweeping the beaches at 5 a.m. and stuff like that, and it was.
Do you know? I don't have such good memories about it, but I'm not going to share them because I take this on a completely different tangent. I do remember the sun though. We were in, was it Mamaia we went to?
Yeah, I think that's the only place you could go.
Yeah. All I remember about that place is the 14th floor. A visit to a doctor.
I had a visit to a doctor as well,
and a dolphinarium. And a lot of people talking about the black market. I remember it was the first time that I'd sort of started hearing people about, your money exchange. Don't go to the shop. There's a wee guy down in the hotel reception that'll get you double the rate. Yes, but you might get envelope filled with toilet paper as well.
Well, no, what we obviously, I think I was there with my dad and my uncle and auntie as well, my mum and dad, and then my dad and my uncle must have got good at it because this is a true story. When we came back from Romania with so much money left over, we bought a new washing machine. So they must have got a good exchange rate somewhere off someone.
Well, they must have. Yeah. I came back with a chess set, which I've still got, inscribed Mamiya 80.
Well, I was there in 81. You beat me.
Crikey. There you go. It's a bit random.
It is a bit random.
Listeners, anybody, I bet nobody listening's been to Romania. Dear. Right. Next song. Next song.
So, yes. Sorry, what?
No, sorry. Go on. Carry on.
So I mentioned earlier that, when people ask you the question about who your favourite band is, right? For years, right, I've always said that my favourite band are that Petrol Emotion, right? And I probably will still stick to that, ignoring the fact that everyone's answer should be the Beatles.
The Beatles.
And I've been going through a bit of that Petrol Emotion resurgence recently because the guys have been doing stuff online, doing album playthroughs and stuff, and it's been great listening to them talk about making all these albums and stuff like that. So my fourth song is on their first album, a song called Tightlipped, which I'm not sure if it is necessarily my favorite song of theirs, but it reminds me of a particular moment. I should say that I learned about that Petrol Emotion from one of Dave's tapes. That's how why all this hangs together.
Yeah.
But my favourite ever gig I went to was that Petrol Emotion at the Barras, and I think it was like 1988 or something like that. And I'm not, I've never been one. You mentioned
was that your first gig? Did you say?
No, my favourite ever gig.
Oh, your favourite ever gig, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Is that Petrol Emotion at the Barras, and it was one of these kind of, I've never been one for mosh pits really. There's, you mentioned Steve McCallum earlier on. He and I got stuck by accident in the mosh pit at Muse and quickly escaped because we were a bit too old for that shit then. But when I was, we were, we got there early. We just stood at the front of the stage. The support band came on, then Muse came on, and they started with Nights of Sidonia, and
nice.
And then we realised that actually we were too close to the front, and we were effectively within what we call the radius of mosh. And that bit in Nights of Sidonia where it all kind of builds up, then goes nuts. The kind of no one's going to take me alive bit. And we're just standing there going, oh no, we knew what was going to happen, and it all just went mental, and we kind of shuffled our way back. But with Tightlipped, it was different because at that time we were all in the front. It was all going nuts. My mate Dave, who got me the tape, he was quite tall. He accidentally head-butted somebody and broke their nose. There was blood everywhere. There was and then we all kind of battered back a bit and then kind of took a breather. And then Tightlipped came on, and I kind of went for it. And I think it's the only time I can remember making it to the fence at the front. Was during this song when that came back on. So that's why I picked it, because it's kind of in my favourite moment, a favourite gig, when I kind of fought my way to the very front to mosh properly.
Are you still in touch with that member of the band that it was that Petrol Emotion that it was, guy
yeah. So
was
Kieran, works. I don't know if he still works at Sky, but no, it's I'm friends with one of the band on Facebook now. It's just kind of one of these things that happen, as everybody gets old and becomes equally boring, So, no, it's good. The guys have been. In fact, this Sunday night they're doing the kind of Zoom call about their album Chemi Crazy, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, nice! Just going at a sort of listening party thing, or is it? Or are they just going
to? So they do their own kind of thing. So they all come on a Zoom call. They just talk about the circumstances leading up to the album, then they play through the album and then talk about it afterwards and stuff. It's really good.
Yeah. You see, That's my, when I look back and look at the things that are being done on sort of virtually now, and I think of Mr. Burgess starting his Twitter listening parties.
Yeah.
He was on to something there, wasn't he?
No, and they're really, I've done a few. They're really, really good fun.
Yeah, I've quite enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Some of them. I mean, I think he's done over a couple of hundred of them now.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
How many of the live stream things have you done? Have you been on since they started doing that?
Maybe live only 5 or 6.
All right. Okay. Which
I
ones?
remember I did the Joy Division ones, the Peter Hook ones. I did the Lloyd Cole Rattlesnakes one.
Lloyd Cole. How was that one?
It's good. Yeah.
Lloyd Cole. Crikey.
Yeah. No, I love that album. You know, it's one of these, you know, albums from, you know, that time in your life, you know, that late teen time, you know, where, you know, because it was just super pretentious, you know, mentioned all sorts of you know, pretentiously famous people and stuff like that. You know, when you're a teenager, you think it's quite cool.
Yeah. Well, there's a question for you. When a teenager, and what you think is cool is very, very different to what you think is cool as a 40/50 something all those years later. And how much of that has changed?
See, I don't really think I've changed that much. You know, it's kind of you know, you kind of learn to hide your worst excesses, I suppose. But you know, when I was you know 17, right, I would just kind of go about reading Albert Camus, thinking I was really cool, right? And you know, I still do that now. So you know, I haven't really kind of changed that much.
Albert,
you know?
who?
Albert Camus. You know, because you know, I've been this year. I've been doing a master's in philosophy, right? And that is kind of driven by all the philosophy I tried to read when I was a teenager and didn't understand it. You know, right. So the reason I'm doing that is going back now and trying to understand all the things that I just read to be cool at the time. You know, and it turns out it's actually quite hard work.
So how much of your philosophy stuff is touched on, spoken about Stoics?
Not that much actually. There's not been much Stoic stuff. There's a little bit of, you know, we did a little bit of Plato that had a little bit of that in it.
Yeah.
But you know, I've read Seneca and all sorts of stuff. You know, so it's kind of I'm quite into that, really.
Yeah. What's your I'm not going to ask you to pull out I'm not going to ask you to pull out a quote, but if there's something from one of those, you know, kind of main, you know, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, those kind of guys, that is there anyone that sort of stands out for you? Any like of the quotes of theirs, or the sort of, you know, anything that let's ask it this way: is there anything that, when you think of challenges that you've faced recently, where there's something that immediately, so I think the more you read that sort of stuff, it becomes you know, you find it appearing in different places quite regularly, right?
No, you do. And you know, part of what I do with Dark Edinburgh, right, is every night match the photo to a quote, right? So, you know, I'll often throw in a Seneca or a Marcus Aurelius into that. My favourite one actually is to throw in a Sylvia Plath to see if anybody likes that. They never do. It's funny. I was lining up the next few days photos at lunchtime today, and for the first time ever, I kind of broke it. So Saturday nights, here's a preview. Saturday nights, Dark Edinburgh photos being paired with a quote from the film Poltergeist. I've never done that before. No, the thing is, it's kind of the thing for me is, you know, reading all that kind of Camus and stuff when I was young and not really understanding it, right? The thing that always interested me was the notion of the absurd, right? Camus talks about the absurd, and the thing about it is that's kind of how I've always felt about stuff. Is you kind of look at the world and never really quite understand it, you know, and the fact that you see lots of people who kind of seem to go through life kind of know what they're doing, and you kind of feel quite jealous of that, but then realize they don't really, you know, and
totally.
And that's what that's where Terra Exitus came from, right? Terra Exitus is my version of that absurdist view of the world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of so I can't think of a particular. It's funny because I spend all my time looking at quotes, but I can't think of a particular one. You know.
No, but I like that. I like that whole idea, because I've constantly said to people when people I get, even up until a couple of years ago, I would constantly kind of question what on earth I was flipping up to, and it's that kind of question at its heart. I can't get away from asking myself that question periodically of, like, what am I, what exactly am I here for? I do think about these things.
Yeah, but
probably too much, people would say, but
but that's the kind of joy of it, right? I suppose as a teenager, why I connected to all of that stuff was, that the whole, this is in Terra Exitus, right? The idea is that, there's a guy who doesn't really see the point of the world, but he discovers there's an awful lot of people who think exactly like him, right?
Yeah.
And for me, reading what all these clever people had written about it, and kind of and just realizing that actually not having a clue was okay, reading Sartre's Being and Nothingness when you're like 17 and kind of going, well, I don't understand it, but he doesn't. He seems to think there's no point to it as well, so that's maybe all right.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Oh, brilliant! So I got on a I guess a similar similar vein. We would talk about, like, not really having a too much of a clue. I guess there's some sort of structure, just kind of like coming back when you think there's some kind of things that you realize work over time, and some things that don't work, and you kind of I think I took into my mid-40s to kind of really start to realize that some things definitely didn't work, and maybe it was time to kind of knock it on the head. Is there anything that you can think of in your life that you've kind of it's struck you in some way, shape, or form, in recent years, where you've kind of gone, hold on a sec, it's time to
there's a print on the wall in our living room, right?
Yeah.
I've forgotten the name of the artist now. It'll come back to me. But it's a very simple print. In fact, it looks like you could letter set it. It's just black. It's just black letters on white, and it just says on it, "Work hard and be nice to people." And
yes,
I can't remember. You can Google it. It's a very famous print, right? And for me, that is it, right? There's a similar line in one of Camus' books called La Peste, or the Plague, which is very appropriate to now. If you want to read a good book about living through a plague, although it's an allegory of occupation during the war, but it's about an actual plague hitting a city, and
right.
The hero of that book is the Dr. Rieu, and in the book he refuses to, much like the NHS now, he refuses to see himself as a hero and says, well, actually there was a plague and I'm the doctor, so it's my job to deal with it, right? And the line that strikes me in that is that he kind of says, somebody kind of tries to build him up as a hero, and he says, no, the important thing is to do your job well. That's the important thing. He was, in French, it's bien faire ton métier, do your job well.
Yeah.
and when I read that when I was like, I don't know, 16 or 17, you know, that, you know, actually, you know, I'll show off, but I read it in French, would you believe? I could do enough French back then. I couldn't do that now, no chance. That stuck with me forever since then, right? You know, that this kind of guy who, you know, was you know, thinking of himself as, you know, people were seeing him as a hero, but he never thought of himself as a hero because he just saw his role was to do his job well, you know, and that kind of, you know, work hard and be nice to people thing is something that I think is the most important thing. You know, that's why I put it on the wall in the living room so my kids see it every day.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said about having that integrity, that not even so much a pride, but just you know, the knowledge that you're giving something your best. And it might not be perfect. And in fact, you know, as I've learned as the years gone by, in fact, when it's not perfect, that's the biggest opportunity, you know, to keep going and keep learning.
Absolutely, yeah.
Learn from the mistakes. Yeah, I like that. I like that. And be nice to people as well.
Yeah.
That doesn't hurt. That doesn't hurt, does it?
Nah.
What a lovely outlook on life, I think. Work hard and be nice to people.
Absolutely.
See, you're a lovely man. Let's go on to your last song.
my last song, right? So this kind of ties it all back together. So if you remember the tape, the thing that kind of formed my musical being, the tape started with a song by The Fall, called "Hot Aftershave Bop," which is a very, very obscure Fall song. But ever since then, I've loved The Fall, and I don't know. You know, those of you who know The Fall, you know, people either absolutely love The Fall or absolutely hate them, and somewhere in the middle, people might like the 2 or 3 slightly poppier ones, like when they did a Kinks cover or whatever, you know. But most of the time, everybody goes, "That's unlistenable shite." But I love The Fall, and I have a holiday routine, which is very much that when I'm on holiday, I will just sit in the sun or sit in the shade and only listen to The Fall. That's my kind of summer holiday thing. And I did that specifically because I know that Marquis Smith would hate that. And I remember you mentioned, you know, the very first cruise we went on, I read Mark's book Renegade, sitting in the sun on a cruise ship being handed bottles of Corona, giggling to myself that I thought this is not what he had in mind when he wrote this book. But the folk song that I've picked for my 5th song is "Hey Luciani," which is it's probably not. It's probably in my top 10 favorite folk songs. But the reason I picked it is when I first went to uni in '87, I went through to Glasgow, and didn't really know anybody. And there was one guy I went to school with was there, and we used to meet for lunch every day in the Union. And because at that point I now thought I was cool because I'd had Dave's tape. You know, there was nothing really I wanted to play on the jukebox. There's only 2 songs that I thought were acceptable on the jukebox. Yeah. One was "Birthday" by the Sugar Cubes, and the other was "Hey Luciani" by The Fall. So when we were meeting up for lunch, if Stephen came into the Union bar and heard "Hey Luciani" was on, he knew I was already there. And you know, so that
is that because nobody else would play it?
Well, probably, yeah. You know, it's probably not, because you know the Fall kind of do divide opinion. I'm kind of a member of the Mighty Fall Facebook group, and I feel a bit of a fraud in there because the Fall fans in there are like proper actual, you know, cut them open and it says The Fall all the way through people, right? You know, but no, I do love The Fall very much indeed, and you know, certainly reading I've read all the books, the Hanley's books and stuff, and actually I was, you know, I'll just name drop a bit. I was chatting with Paul Hanley, the drummer, on Twitter today, because he replied to one of my tweets. Go figure. So yeah,
how do you find Twitter these days?
Oh, it's a hellscape, isn't it? Really. But yes, but it's but I just continue to do the same things that I've always done. I just make really crap jokes. That's that's all I do.
I still think that there's still some friendly people on there. There's still some.
Oh no, there's a lot of great content. There's some very funny people. But if you ever walk off piste on Twitter, it gets very, very dark very, very quickly. I'm in a nice little bubble on Twitter where everybody's generally quite kind of cheery and making jokes, and a little bit of news makes its way in. But if you go too far off to the side, it gets pretty dark pretty quickly.
Yeah, it can get a bit nasty. I think, and that's why I kind of stayed away from it for a little bit. But as we've said, never say never. I go back periodically. Go back periodically and have a little look. So I've got. Do you know? I'm really enjoying doing this. Of all the questions that I've asked you, they've kind of they've flowed quite nicely. But now comes the point where I wrap up with the ones that I've got left, and it's just going to appear like really random. But that's cool with you, isn't it?
That's absolutely cool, yeah.
So, one I was going to ask you just earlier on. So, just thinking about what and or who inspires Scott Liddell. What sort of things people,
I love kind of creativity. I love ideas more than anything, and so when you see someone who has created something amazing, I always find that's my best thing. When I mentioned Julian Barnes earlier on, right? And whenever I read a Julian Barnes book, there's part amazement and the kind of part kind of insane jealousy. The way that he writes, it kind of blows you away at times, and you just kind of go, I could never do that. So anything like that, the one thing that I absolutely can't do is draw. I've got no artist in me at all, and I'm always amazed to see people who can just sit down with a pen and a blank piece of paper and create something amazing, because I just can't do that. My brain is incapable of doing that, and that always blows me away.
But you do it with words. You can paint a picture with 1,000 words, right?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
I mean, that sex scene, like in the Beetle Man. I mean,
yeah. I really wish I hadn't. I wrote that on a train, right? And I was sitting. That in the trains you either get a table seat or you get two together. I was sitting one of the two together seats in a really busy train from like Leeds or somewhere, and I was writing it. I could tell that the guy sitting next to me was reading it over my shoulder. Really weird. No, I'm not good enough to write a sex scene. I discovered. I think I have to be very, very good to do it. There's only in the two books that I've written after that, that's really only implied, never really described.
So listen, say the books were just to like go through the roof. They were to sell, worldwide, or you ended up there's a question on here that says, what would you do with £100 million? So say that came from book sales, or say it just landed on your lap, which it's not going to, but say it did. What would you do with £100 million?
Well, £100 million is more money than anyone sensibly needs, right? So, I think you need to do something. You'd obviously do all the obvious things like look after your kids and, buy a nice house and buy a nice car and everything else, but you've got plenty left over. I'd probably, the thing is, because I like, the idea of creativity and stuff like that, I would definitely set up a kind of business incubator stuff. I'd be an angel investor. I would want to give people money for their ideas and try and help them bring ideas to life. And with 100 million, you could take 50 million of it and invest in multiple companies to do cool stuff, you know,
Yeah.
and you'd have to give some of it away, you know. So
Right.
I'd probably, you know, I grew up in Westerhale, so I'd probably do something there, you know.
Right. Okay.
Um,
So dive deeper into one of them then. Right. With all that money, and you were going to angel investor, you'd be looking to kind of put it into like cool stuff.
yeah.
What kind of really cool idea would you that's kind of kicking about, you've read about, heard about, you know, or maybe it's not happened yet, but something that you'd like to see happen that you would definitely put your money into?
Well, I think one thing that I'd love to do, right, is, and this isn't really an idea I've seen, but I think, you know, I have this theory, right, that, you know, when you think about all the things that people are good at, right, the people that you see, you know, I was watching Andy Murray today play tennis, right?
Yeah.
And he won Wimbledon, right, because his mum was into tennis, so therefore he played tennis, therefore he got good at tennis, right? How many people have there been? How many kids have there been who were better at tennis than Andy Murray, but never had the chance to play it? You know, and I would want to put money into something that actually gave kids a chance to discover what they might be good at, right?
I love that.
Because the thing about it is that, you know, you get accidental collisions where someone finds that, you know, that they might be good at playing an instrument and they've got a good enough teacher that's able to kind of push them forward, and they become good at it. But for every one of them, there's maybe, you know, hundreds of folk who were maybe better but never had the right opportunity, right? And there has to be some way to try and give people the opportunities to find out what they might be good at, because it's there's, you know, there's so much that is entirely accidental about it, and it doesn't need to be, you know, you can never absolutely guarantee that, you know, you can't push people through every single thing to see if you can't go through every single instrument, every single sport, you know, but you can do a little bit more to actually see what people might be good at. And that's something in the book that I haven't published yet. There's part of it that talks about, it's set in the future, and it talks about the fact that what tends to happen with all of us in the life we live now is that we get matched to our career quite early on. And you pick what you're going to do before you're really fully formed, right? You know, if you look at you know, you kind of chose the army, and then you're doing all not the army, the RAF, and then you later in your time in the RAF, you find out who you really were, and then you do something else, right? How many people don't get the chance to do something else? They just, you know, they stumble into the first thing, you know, that they could vaguely do, and they just carried on. And you know, and I kind of believe that we get streamed too quickly. You know, because I ended up doing IT because I was good at maths and good at engineering and everything else. So therefore, you know, you go and become an IT guy. But you know, I might have been a better photographer, I might have been a better writer, but those were not things that I was ever encouraged to do.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a great idea and a great way to invest money there. I have this question that's just nestling down the bottom, almost waiting for this moment.
Go for it.
Because it happens, right? People get to a point in their life or in their career where they maybe start to kind of realize, do you know what, this isn't for me, and they can feel stuck or lost or even just fed up. And at that point, it can be hard to do something about it if you've been, like you say, invested, molded, and developed in that career for so long, to actually do something about it. What would be your advice for anybody that feels like that?
The thing is that, you know, I think you have to have a, you know, if you're kind of in a career and you know, life gets in the way of making big changes, right? It's hard to get your life out the way enough to create the space, right? So therefore, you have to have a reasonable idea of what it is that you'd like to do differently, because otherwise you don't really, you're not going to have the headspace to kind of really try lots of different things, right? So you kind of have to have some idea of what you think you might want to do, but then you just have to find a way to apply some time to it. Now, either that's through education or learning or everything else. If you take photography with me, right, I just found a way to put the time into it, and in my own kind of small way, kind of got to the point where I can have a lot of fun with it, right? And that is just by applying yourself and applying as much time as you can to the thing that you want to do. And so you can always fight, and then you've got serendipity. Yeah, you can get lucky at that point, right? I've been so lucky with the things that I've tried to do. There's a blog post on my blog which is it talks about the gift of unexpected consequences, right? And because when I wrote the Beetle Man, and when Graham and I were working at Sky, someone wanted to doing this charity thing about people, to help people write, amateurs to write books, and I got invited along to talk about it, and I ended up on stage with my hero Ian Banks, and that was completely blew my mind, and it all just came about because I just did stuff, and it's amazing what that does, right? What you can't do is just kind of sit in a corner in the huff going, well, I'm not going to be able to do anything else, right? You have to. Action creates opportunity, and opportunity with a bit of luck can turn into something else, and that happened for me with doing writing, happened with me doing photography. I've given talks about it in the coolest lecture theatre in Edinburgh, probably, and stood there feeling a total fraud, but also kind of loving it, right? Because it's such a fun thing to do, and that only happened because I just got on with it and put myself out there and see what happens. And it's amazing. If you throw a line in the water, you might catch a fish, and that's what you got to do. You got to find a way to get the line in the water, because the fish won't jump out and get you at all. You have to do something.
Yeah, got to take action. Yeah, got to stop talking, take action, just fucking do it. Right.
Well, you're the best at that, right?
Here we go. I wanted to put this up because you mentioned your blog, so just people can have a look at just another one, scottliddell.com, and the other one was is it darkedinburgh.com as well?
No, co.uk. I was always a cheapskate when I set that one up.
Oh, look. Co.uk.
This is a sophisticated operation.
Isn't it? Isn't it just? So the last question that I'm going to ask you tonight, it's not on here now, but it's the best question to ask you last. I've got two other questions for you in the green room, but I keep those ones to myself. So the last question for listeners, just on the basis of the last answer and kind of what you're talking about, and doing something, being consistent with it, going for it. What's next for you? What do you fancy trying next?
So I've kind of settled into a groove now, really, right? That
not listening to the fall, you haven't.
Well, that's true. No, that's not. Well, if a groove can be defined by a kind of banging bass line, then you'll get some banging bass lines. No, the thing is, there's not. I don't really feel that the need to do something massively different, because actually, I do my work stuff right, and that'll just pay the bills like it does, right, and that's fine. But the photography stuff, I'll keep doing. The book will be fun. We'll see what happens with that. And again, who knows where that'll take me. But beyond that, I just want to keep writing. I've got I've got a plan. The next, if I live this long, I've got the next 3 books are all kind of planned out. I just need to find the time to do them, and that's kind of where I'm going to put all my energy. Really, is into that, because that's the thing I like doing the most.
Yeah, brilliant. There you go. More writing, and so we hopefully we'll see the Am I allowed to say the name of the music?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So science fiction we'll see this year.
Science fiction, hopefully this year. Yeah.
Brilliant, and more writing. Wonderful. Listen, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoyed it. I've learnt stuff as well. As well, I've learnt a few things that I didn't know. I love the answer on kind of what you would do with all that money there. I think it's brilliant. And some of the other answers there, I've had a great time. I had a wonderful time, and I stand by what I said right at the beginning. I do think that's quite an eclectic, quite a, I would encourage anybody that's listened to go and listen to those tunes if you've not, because it's something, like you've said, with the Letraset on the tape, something a little bit different from what was, around with those songs, but some great tunes. And as soon as Pinky's Pirate Radio is up and running, Suede will be on there.
Good stuff.
I'll be after a quote to go with it, and we'll do it in some pictures.
Absolutely.
Listen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Any final words that you would like to?
No, just thank you for having me. I've had a great time. The thing is, it didn't feel that much different to the blethers that you and I had in that sushi place at Ealing.
The only difference is my face has not gone like bright red tonight.
Yeah. You really get a sense of what it's like to be in the military when you watch Graham eat as much wasabi as he can for a dare to himself.
Do you know what I think I'm going to do? I've got some of these tortilla chips. I think it's going to become a question that I ask people. So let me ask you, the very first person to be asked this. If you answer yes, I'll send you a present. If you answer no, then I probably still will, just not that present. So the hottest chili chip challenge, hottest chili chip in the world challenge, yes or no?
No.
Will you, if I do a video like that, because this is what I want to do. I want to do like a video, get somebody on and do like a live or record a load of them and do a montage of people doing the hottest chili chip.
Have you seen there's a series on Netflix about lots of I can't remember what it's called now, but it's like weird sports. There's like cheese rolling and stuff like that. And one of the episodes is them chili eating competitions in the States.
Oh, I've seen a few of them on YouTube. They're insane.
No, there's no need for that.
Do you know what it always reminds me of? Every time I think of like hot chili eating competitions and like insane heat challenges, I can't help but, do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where the chili cook-off?
Yeah.
Where Chief Wiggum's chili and Homer drinks the candle wax and then goes into the desert and gets bitten by a dog who's done by the voice of Johnny Cash. Yeah. I mean, don't do drugs, kids.
No, there's no need for that.
Right. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Time it is good night. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Scott, for coming along. It's been wonderful. Until next time on the JFDI podcast, good night.